Trying to get this lighting right. All right. Shabbat Shalom, Israel. Shabbat Shalom, Israel. And when I say Shabbat Shalom to Israel, I mean to the bloodline of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who have suffered slavery and oppression according to Bible prophecy and are now awakening as to who they really are. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom to those fortunate and blessed among the children of Ham and Yafet, who have also recognized who the true Hebrews are, and along with them have clung hold to Messiah, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, and our Father Yahweh in perfect righteousness. Greetings and Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom to all of the brothers and sisters who are in the chat. Yakoba Ben Israel, Brother Don Hines. Only One Way, Isha Shama and her husband Shama. Akmar, Brother Ruel. Laviska 23, Maturity Approach, Sister. Listen to your body, Sister Daniels and Brother Daniels. Shabbat Shalom and greetings. Naisha Wade, Brother Mark. Shabbat Shalom to all of you. We have been studying the epistle of Paul to the Romans. And we are in chapter 10, the 10th division of this epistle. It was, it's interesting. The Bible puts chapter and verse to it. The translators did. And good, for that, because it helps us keep track of where things are in the Bible, right? So it helps us keep track of that, the numbers and the letters and the chapters or whatever. But this was a letter written, and it's in divisions. It's divided up. Like all of the apostles' letters, they're divided up. And this is the 10th part, the 10th division of the epistle of Paul to the Romans. And what we have been studying so far, as we have seen, first, the epistle starts off, as we know, it started off giving us the definition of the gospel, the Bible definition of the gospel. And it showed us that the gospel is really a message of Messiah regarding the righteousness of his Father being revealed. And that's really the gospel. That is the true gospel. It's not just the good news of Jesus. That is not the gospel. The gospel of Messiah, according to what we read, is a message from Messiah regarding the righteousness of his Father. Why? Because the Father's righteousness, the Father's character has been misrepresented and misaligned by his enemy, Satan, who has promised falsely that men and women can be gods. That's what he has falsely promised. And he's got the human race believing that for the most part, whether they realize it or not. That was the introduction. Then the apostle went on, because he's writing to Gentiles. Remember, the apostle Paul was the apostle to the Gentiles. Now, among those Gentiles were also what the Bible labels as Grecians. Let's take a look at that real quick in Acts chapter 6. Acts chapter 6. Now, in Acts chapter 6, just as a quick overview, Gentiles had not received the gospel yet in Acts chapter 6. They had not received the gospel. And only Hebrews received the gospel. But there was these people they called Grecians. And let's take a look in Acts chapter 6. I'm going to begin at verse 1 and go down from verse 1 down to verse 7. Acts chapter 6 from 1 to 7. The Grecians. In those days, when the number of the disciples was multiplied, I want you to understand something. Notice what it said. Acts chapter 6, verse 1. In those days, when the number of the Christians, did it say that? When the number of the Christians was multiplied, did it say that? No. What did the word tell us? In those days, when the number of the disciples, that's what we were called, followers of the Hebrew Messiah were called disciples. was multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews because their widows were neglected in the daily ministration. Who are these Grecians? If you look them up, they call them Hellenists. What was a Hellenist? A Hellenist is a bloodline Hebrew that was living as if he was a Gentile because he was living among the Gentiles and lived like a Gentile. Forgotten everything that was taught by Moses and was living like a Gentile, though they were bloodline Hebrews. In fact, in one of the Gospels, I don't know which one right now, but when Messiah told the scribes and Pharisees, where I go, you cannot follow me. And they said, where will he go? They asked, will he go among the dispersed, among the Gentiles and teach the Gentiles? That's what they asked. Will he go among the dispersed? The dispersed are the bloodline Hebrews that were scattered among the Gentiles and began to live like the Gentiles. Matter of fact, Ezekiel mentions them when he talks about our fathers, when he says, we were scattered among the Gentiles and we dishonored our father among the Gentiles. I guess a lot of us might rightly be called Hellenists now. Am I right? Because we living like we don't know who we are, right? And so we living among the Gentiles and acting like we are Gentiles. You know, that's something that's not new. Our fathers went down to Egypt, Jacob and his 70 souls. And over the course of time, they started acting like they were really Egyptians. And the father had to use the Egyptians to remind them, no, you're not Egyptian. You're an Israelite. You're Hebrew. And by the oppression of them, the father was trying to give them a wake-up call. Wait a minute. Could it be that by the oppression of us today, the father is trying to tell us, no, you're not an American. No, you're not a Briton. You're not French. No, you're a Hebrew. Could it be that the father's allowing these things to happen to us today to remind us that no, we're not what we think we are? Could be. But let's go back. Acts chapter 6. So in those days, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews because their widows were neglected in the daily ministration. So widows were taken care of in the Israelite teaching. The father provided. The tithe was for the Levites and the widows and the fatherless. That's what the tithe money was for. It wasn't for pastors to lay up money and buy all these houses and cars and say they're anointed. No, it was supposed to be taking care of the poor. And so they were the Grecians, the awakened Hebrews, and that's what they were, the ones that didn't realize, what this all Messiah thing meant until they started hearing from the disciples about the Hebrew Messiah. So it said the Grecians were talking against the Hebrews, the teachers of the truth, because their widows were not getting included in the tithes that were being collected for the widows. Okay. And the apostles acknowledged this. Verse 2, then the 12 called the multitude of the disciples unto them and said, it is not reason that we should leave the word of Yah and serve tables. What is that? What are they saying? They're saying we are doing an important work in teaching the word. So we can't teach the word and take care of the widows. Y'all got to help us. You Hebrews that believe, you got to help us. We can't serve tables and teach the word. Okay. Verse 3. Wherefore, brethren, look out ye among you 7 men of honest report, full of the Holy Ghost and wisdom, whom we may appoint over this business. So find us 7 Hebrews that we can appoint to actually minister to the poor widows and the fatherless among the Grecians, who are now awakening as to who they are. Will he go among the Gentiles and and teach the dispersed? That's what they were saying. Teach the dispersed, that is, the Grecians, the Hellenists, who they are. Let's appoint 7 men full of the Holy Ghost, holy men now, that we're going to appoint to manage this business of ministering to the widows. And so they appointed 7 men. But we will give ourselves continually to prayer and the ministry of the word, because that's what they were called to do, to minister the word of the Most High. And so they were doing that. And so they didn't want to be overburdened. So they had their brethren do this business. Today in the Christian church, they call them deacons, right? They call them deacons. And they actually called them deacons then. This is the job of the deacon. The job of the deacon is to minister the needs of the poor among the family, the Hebrew family, the Israelite family, that those disciples trusting in Messiah. That's the deacon's job. That's their whole job. They're not supposed to be preaching. Their job is to minister, to provide the food, to bring the clothes, to bring what's necessary to help the people. That's their job. It's a holy job. It's an important job. They said, see, men that were full of the Holy Ghost, wisdom, honest. Yeah. Well, Christian deacons are not Israelite deacons, are they? Let's continue. And the saying pleased the whole multitude, and they chose Stephen, a man full of faith and of the Holy Ghost, and Philip, and Prochorus, and Nicanor, and Timon, and Parmenas, and Nicholas, a proselyte of Antioch, whom they set before the apostles. And when they had prayed, they laid their hands on them. In verse 7, and the word of Yah increased, and the number of disciples multiplied in Jerusalem greatly, and a great company of the priests were obedient to the faith. Obedient to the faith. What was the faith? Well, one thing we know at this point, it wasn't Christianity. What was the faith? It was the faith of Messiah. It was obedient to Father's righteousness. It was obedient to following Father's righteousness, which was a born witness. That's the gospel. The message of the Messiah was of the Father's righteousness, bearing witness to the Father. And if you read anything, if you get anything from the gospel, you should understand the whole life of Messiah's ministry was to bear witness of his Father's righteousness. And Messiah is the example in word, in deed, in life of the perfection of the Father's righteousness. Father has set him forth to represent him to us. That's why he's not only the Son of Yah, but he is also the Son of Man. The firstborn called that. Okay? So that is the gospel. That was Paul was teaching us in the beginning of Romans. Then he was explaining to the Gentile converts the Hebrews' place in this, that they received the oracles, but they weren't perfect. They were judging you, and they shouldn't be, because you following what you thought is best. Now you are being brought in through faith. They are brought in by faith, brought into Messiah, the Hebrew Messiah. You are brought in through faith. And then he went to explain very powerfully, as we saw in chapter 3, 4, 5, and 6 of Romans, the righteousness by faith message. That is the most important message Paul delivered in all of his epistles. The righteousness by faith. How to obtain perfection through faith. You cannot obtain perfection, he was basically explaining, through any works that you do. You cannot obtain perfection. You can obtain perfection through faith in the Hebrew Messiah that was appointed by the Father of perfect righteousness. Explain that. Then he goes on to explain how we have this other law working within us, the law of sin and death, whereby we want to do the right thing, but our desire is to do the wrong thing. I was talking to my dad this morning, and we were talking about this, mistakes you might have made in the past when you're 19 and 20 years old and you're a man, and you have all the urges and feelings and desires of a man. Even if you're married, even if you have a steady girlfriend, but some other person comes along, and it's hard to say no. And I explained to my father how the Most High gave me that victory, because I came to him honestly, and I said to my heavenly Father, if you don't stop me, I'm going to have sex with this woman, because this woman wants me and I want her, and she's not my wife. I'm going to have sex with her. You need to stop me. And he did multiple times. And I told my father, you didn't know the Most High. So I said, when you saw the woman and she saw you, you was toast. That, my brethren, is the law of sin and death. It's that law that's within you, that there's something you desire, want, that you know you shouldn't have. But it's an overpowering law. And it overtakes us until we learn of the perfect righteousness of the Father. And that's what saved me. When I say saved, I should say delivered me from doing wrong. And only he delivered me because I was honest with him. I made a lot of mistakes in my life, but that one I got right, praise the Most High. Because it happened to me multiple times. It wasn't one or two times I would have a woman come at me that I desired and she desired me. And it seemed overwhelming to me. And I would come to the Father and say, I want to have sex with this woman unless you stop me. Sometimes the woman, one time I met with a woman. I met with her with the express purpose of having sex with her. And she came to me and she said, there's something around you. She said, I can't even come near to you. I'm afraid to get too close to you. I can't mess around with you. I got to leave. So something's wrong. And I said, don't worry, I know what it is. And I did know what it was. I had prayed to the Father and said, if you don't stop me, I'm going to have sex with this woman. That was the law of sin and death. And he delivered me. Another time a woman came to me, and I'm telling you the truth as the Most High writes it in my record in heaven. And she said, I don't believe in God. She said, but now I'm meeting you and I want you. But there's something that you have with God, she said. That's what she said. And she said, you are appointed to him. I can't, no. And she kept fighting it. And I said, don't worry. I know what it is. And I left her alone. And she left me alone. If you're tempted like that, be honest with your Father. There's a law of sin and death. That's what Paul was teaching us. There's a law of sin and death, whereas you want to do well, but this temptation, man, is strong. See, I can't explain it from the woman's perspective. I can explain it very well from the man's perspective because I'm a man. Now I'm 61 now. And shoot, man, I can still see a woman and she can arouse me. But that don't mean I'm doing anything because my Heavenly Father keeps me. See, there's a difference between thinking that a woman's not going to arouse you. That's a lie. That is a bold face. If anybody, I don't get aroused, that is some crap. I could see a woman today and she could be dressed a certain way, smell a certain way, sound a certain way, and it could turn me on. But I'm not going after her because the Father keeps me. That's the power of the Father. You still a man. And when I was 30 years ago, when I was 30 years old, oh my gosh, forget about it. I would have been toast too. But the Father had kept me because I asked him to. Okay, it wasn't me. It wasn't that I'm a good man. No. I'd have been up in that all day long. But the Father said, I said to him, you, Father, need to stop me because this is what my flesh wants. And he did. That's the law of sin and death. And that's the power of the spirit of life in Messiah. Okay, I didn't have to call on the Father. I could have just struggled with it. That's a lot of dudes do. They struggle with it. Oh, and then all of a sudden they find themselves up in something that they have no business up in. And like David was just walking across his roof one night and looked down and seen the most beautiful. You see, brothers and sisters, you know you're very well. Some of y'all maybe not know, but most of y'all know. You have a power. And it was given to you. You were created from the rib of a man. And that power is over men. You could just, all you got to do. Some people don't even understand the power they have. You bat your eyes a little bit. You smell a certain way. Your voice sounds a certain way. And doggone, don't wear something where the shape is being shown. You can make a brother a slave real quick. And that's what happened to David. He looked down and he saw something that the Most High had created. And all he said, he had power. He's the king. Send it to my room. Send her up here. That decision haunted him for the rest of his life. It caused him to have her husband killed, to try to hide it. And the sword never departed from his house for the rest of his life. Until the day he died, his sons were fighting over the throne. One decision like that will haunt you. You're going to have to live with it, brethren. It does. That's why I say, if you're being tempted like that now, and you know this truth, call on your Father. Seriously, get on your knees somewhere by yourself and say, Father, I want this. And I don't care that it's wrong, but I need you to stop me for your righteousness' sake. I'm a witness. He will do it. He will do it. Okay? He will. Law of sin and death is what he was teaching us. What I want to do, I don't do it. What I hate, that's what I do. Okay? That's what I do. So, chapter 8, he teaches us the power of the perfect righteousness of the Father given to us in Messiah, and how through that alone we overcome the law of sin and death. You see, brethren, it's a spirit. Disobedience is a spirit, and obedience is a spirit. Righteousness is a spirit, and unrighteousness is a spirit. You have to understand the world of spirit. When you're reading the word of the Most High, understand the world of spirit is more than the world of flesh. And we are seeking to deal with a perfect spirit of righteousness. There is a spirit of darkness and deception. Y'all know that. And it plays on us because we're born sinners. So it plays on us. This is the power, the message of the gospel. The message of the Messiah is Father's righteousness. Father delivers us by his righteousness. Why? Because the righteousness is perfect morality. He gives us that spirit. We don't deserve it. Adam was born with it and gave it up. He was born with it and gave it up. That is why Romans 5 taught us, as Adam put sin on all his children, so does the Father through Messiah put righteousness on all his children. Because we were born sinners and the law of sin and death rules in us. But when we choose the message of righteousness from the Father's Spirit, that saves us from death. Father, I want to do this, but unless you stop me, I'm going to do it. He'll stop you. Problem is, we're afraid to ask. Lots of times, brethren, I was tempted, right? And I was afraid to ask the Father. It's almost like I wanted to do it. Like I did want to do it, but I knew if I asked him, he would deliver me. I knew it. So I had to think about asking him. I ain't lying to you, because I knew him. And I said, man, if I ask him, he's going to stop me. If I don't ask him, I could do it. Then I'll play it off. Like it just happened. No, brethren. I saw the parts that were, brothers know what I'm talking about. I saw them parts. And I said, if I ask the Father, he's going to stop me. If I don't ask him, I'm going to go ahead and do what I got to do. And I would ask him. See, that's the choice we got to make. You got the choice now. The power is not within us to turn. The power is within us to choose. That's what Paul is teaching us in Romans. Then we go into chapter 9, and he starts now to focus. He's teaching the Gentile converts and the Hellenists. There's both now. He's teaching them the Israelite history and the Israelite history and how it relates to them. That's what we're learning now in chapter 10. Okay, now he's going to bring up something that Messiah brought up. Messiah brings up this thing here in the Gospel of John, chapter 3. I want to show you. He says something that unless you know where the original came from, you might be a little confused. But let's take a look at the whole thing so we'll see where Paul is coming from when he says it. But Messiah said it first, and he was talking to Nicodemus when he said it. I'm going to start at I'm going to start in Gospel of John, chapter 3, where he's rebuking Nicodemus. And I'm going to start at verse 9. And I'm going to go from verse 9 down to verse 15. Everybody knows verse 16, right? And they misapply it. In fact, let's go from 9 to 16 for the sake of that. But notice what he tells Nicodemus. Now, Nicodemus is a Pharisee, a Hebrew, right? And they don't believe no Gentiles going to be saved. So he's not talking about Gentiles here. See, that's what most people don't understand. Most of these gospels is Messiah talking to Hebrews. He's not talking to Gentiles. So when he's speaking of Israel. Okay. Now we know later he was, obviously, as we read in Romans, reaching out to Gentiles to save them, right? Because he wants to save them. But in the gospels, he's talking to his Hebrew brothers. And Nicodemus was one of them. He's a Hebrew brother, and he's coming secretly to his Hebrew brother to get some words. He don't know why he's there, but he's gonna catch something, right? So here we are, Gospel of John, chapter 3, from verse 9 down to verse 16. Nicodemus answered and said unto him, how can these things be? Yahushua answered and said unto him, art thou a master of Israel and knowest not these things? Verily, verily, I say unto thee, we speak that we do know, and testify that we have seen, and ye receive not our witness. He said, we bearing witness of the Father's righteousness, and you not receiving it. If I have told you earthly things, and ye believe not, how shall ye believe if I tell you of heavenly things? And now verse 13, this is the verse right here. Look. And no man hath ascended up to heaven, but he that came down from heaven, even the Son of Man, which is in heaven. What does all that mean? You're going to find out, because Paul is going to say the same thing. But both Paul and Messiah, well, Moses said it first. We're going to talk to Moses first, okay, for a witness. But let's continue. And as Moses lifted up the serpent, because he's mentioning Moses. That's what verse 13 is about, Moses, right? So he says, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For Yah so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Now, wait a minute. He mentions Moses and the serpent. Question. Who was Moses lifting up the serpent for? Question. Who was Moses lifting up the serpent? What serpent? Well, you see, the children of Israel were murmuring and complaining in the desert. And the Most High, the Bible says, allowed snakes to bite them. And some of them were bitten by poisonous snakes, and some got sick and some died. And so they came to Moses and said, well, the snakes are killing us. They're hurting us. And the Most High said, make a serpent, make a snake out of brass and put it on a pole, that whoever gets bit, when they look at the snake on the pole and believe, they won't die, they won't get sick. So it was the children of Israel that pole and that serpent was on that would be delivered from the bite of the snake. You see, who is the snake for real? It's Satan. He's the serpent. He's the dragon. And Messiah became the substitute for the sin that Satan caused. And if you look upon Messiah, if you trust in him, Israel, you're going to be delivered from the serpent, from the dragon. Now, he said the world, and this is what people get confused because the word world in Greek is dios, but you got to understand it in its context. If you look at John chapter 17, notice what it says in the Gospel of John chapter 17. Gospel of John chapter 17. See, when you're talking about world, you got to look at the context, right? Gospel of John chapter 17. I'm going to begin, hold on. Okay. Well, I'm going to start at verse. Oh man, there's so much. Okay. I'm going to start at verse. I'm going to start at verse 10. I'm going to start at verse 10. I'm going to start at verse 10. Yes. And I'm going to read from verse 10 down to verse 16. The world. Who is the world in this context? Gospel of John chapter 17 from 10 down to verse, actually from 10 to 17. Really verse 15 is what we're looking for. All mine are thine. Messiah is praying to Father Yah. All mine are thine, and thine are mine, and I am glorified in them. And now I am no more in the world, but these are in the world. And I come to thee, Holy Father, keep through thy own name those whom thou hast given me, that they may be one as we are. While I was with them in the world, I kept them in thy name. Those that thou hast given me I have kept, and none of them is lost, but the son of perdition, that the scripture might be fulfilled. Talking about Judas. And now come I to thee. And these things I speak in the world, that they might have my joy fulfilled in themselves. I have given them thy word, and the world hath hated them, because they are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. I pray not that thou shouldest take them out of the world, but thou shouldest keep them from evil. They are not of the world. See, he says, I pray not that thou shouldest take them out the world, but that thou shouldest keep them from evil. They are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. Sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is truth. Yeah, there you go. And then where there's another place where he said, I pray not for the world. I pray not for the world, but for them which thou hast given me. I'm looking for that. He said, for they are thine. That's all that, brother, because he said, I'm not praying for the world. I'm praying for who you gave me in the world. So when he says, Yah so loved the world, he is talking about the people that were given to him that are in the world, starting with Israel. Okay? Starting with Israel. Man, I'm looking for that. Well, I can't find it now, but that's what we're talking about. So the word, verse 15, is that it? I pray not that thou shouldest take them. No, there's one where he says, I pray not for the world. That's what I'm looking for. I pray not for the world, but for them, for those thou hast given me. And where is that? Verse 9. Thank you. That's it, sister. Let's look at verse 9. I pray for them, he said. I pray not for the world. So how could you say in one verse, he so loved the world that he gave, but then Messiah praised him and say, I'm not praying for the world. So there's a contradiction if you're thinking that this message is for the world. Messiah is talking to the Father and say, I pray not for the world, but for them thou hast given me. And then he says to Nicodemus, Yah so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. Did he give him to the world? No, he gave them for those that belong to him in the world. Why? Because those that don't belong to him are not coming into the next kingdom. Those that belong to him are going to be in the kingdom. Does that make sense? So everybody that's of the kingdom is who he came to die for. The people that, let's take it a step further. Is our Satan going to be in the kingdom? No, he's not. Did Messiah die for our Satan? No, he did not. Those that belong to Asatan, he did not die for. Those that come to the Father, that's who he died for. So the world is not everybody. Okay? That clear, isn't it? Well, anyway, he said in verse 13 of chapter 3, he said, no man hath ascended up to heaven, but he that came down from heaven. Let's see what Moses says about that. Deuteronomy, back to chapter 30, as it were. Chapter 30, which we read last night of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 30. Watch this. Now, we read the first 10 verses last night. Okay, we read the first 10 verses last night, Deuteronomy chapter 30. What a power, about the awakening. That's powerful, right? And that's what this is the exciting thing, brethren. Scary and exciting. We are living in these last days. We're living the awakening. Okay, we're living the awakening right now. And I'm going to say again, I was just talking to my wife this morning, the next president of the United States is going to bring in the time of Jacob's trouble. He's going to bring in the time of trouble such as never was. The next president. And I'm telling y'all right now, watch the governor of Florida. Watch the governor of Florida. I believe he will be the next president of the United States. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but time will tell if I'm right or not. I believe that this man, that's the governor of Florida right now, is going to be the next president of the United States, and he's going to bring in the time of trouble such as never was. He's going to be there. Okay? So, watch that. But that's the times that we're living in. We're living in the times of these things. Okay? We're living in the times of these things. Now, Deuteronomy chapter 30. Last night we read down to verse 10. Now watch this. I'm going to start at verse 10, and I'm going to go from verse 10 into verse 14, because this is what Messiah was talking about, and this is what Moses is talking about. And as we're going to read in chapter 10, this is what Paul is talking about. Okay? Yeah. We're it's right in front of us, brethren. Like I said, I don't think we have more than 10 years left before the kingdom of Yah. And it's exciting. The kingdom of Yah is exciting, brethren. That's the end of all of this, right? But there's a bridge of fire. It's a 10-year bridge of fire that we got to go through between now and then. It's just like you're seeing on the earth. You're seeing everything happening on a level of intensity we've never seen before. Just as an example, we could use the weather as an example. You're seeing the fires, the earthquakes, the tornadoes on a level of intensity, the hurricanes that people have never said. Every time you're hearing about one, they're saying this is the greatest one in history, because you're seeing this on levels of intensity you've never seen before. But it goes deeper. The child molestation, the sex trafficking, the prostitution, you're seeing it, the poverty and the riches. You see a multi-billionaire on one side worth $100 billion, and then you got people with children in the street begging on a level of intensity you've never seen before. Okay? The hatred and the anger of people in general, you're seeing it on a level of intensity you've never seen on this level and expanse before. And so that is going to continue to increase. And this next 10 years is fire on all levels. Now, I said all that, but let me also bring the other side. The level and intensity of Father's Spirit is coming on us like it hasn't been seen since Acts of the Apostles. The level of intensity of his Spirit coming on us, awakening us, teaching us, getting us ready, is on a level that hasn't been seen since the apostles walked the earth. Because it's what's causing Asatan to react and bring his intensity. But it's all rising. All things are rising. Yeah, it's all coming right now. So this next 10 years, the end of it is what keeps us going, to understand that at the end of it, Messiah is going to establish the kingdom and destroy, overthrow, completely annihilate Babylon's government. No doubt. But to get there, you got to hang on tight. That's why I say, read the word. Keep reading the word. The Spirit of the Father will keep you and guide you. Keep reading the word. It's going to get more intense. And again, I mentioned to y'all just a couple of times saying, Mark, you mentioned the family. You're going to catch it from your family. It's the biggest test for all of us. Your mother, your father, your brothers, your sisters, your cousins. You're going to catch it from your family. It's going to be hard. No, it's not going to be easy. Don't think it's going to be easy. You're going to catch it from your family. Okay? But as he kept us through temptations in the law of sin and death, he will also keep us through our family situation. And these things that he keeps us through, brethren, these things prepare us for the bridge of fire that brothers and sisters, all of us going to cross. All of us crossing it. We're going to go through fire that would normally burn us to death. But instead, it's going to refine us like gold is refined. All of us. We are guaranteed the victory because righteousness in its perfection from Father Yah will never die. Messiah raised from the dead, and he will never die again. And he's going to be king on this planet. And because we are his disciples, we'll be with him. That's what his prayer was. Okay? So here we're living what Deuteronomy 30 prophesied about. We are part of the awakening. We are what Moses saw 4,000 years ago. That's what he saw. 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, he saw us. Now, Deuteronomy chapter 30. I'm going to begin at verse 10. I'm going to read down to verse 14. If thou shalt hearken unto the voice of Yahweh, thy most high, to keep his commandments and his statutes which are written in this book of the law, and if thou turn unto Yahweh thy most high with all thy heart and with all thy soul. For this commandment which I command thee this day, it is not hidden from thee, neither is it far off. It is not in heaven that thou shouldest say, who shall go up for us to heaven and bring it unto us that we may hear it and do it? Neither is it beyond the sea that thou shouldest say, who shall go over the sea for us and bring it unto us that we may hear it and do it? But the word is very nigh thee, in thy mouth and in thy heart, that thou mayest do it. What is that? Think of the scene, brethren. See, think of the scene. What do I mean by that? Well, the Father Yah and the Messiah were on Mount Sinai. Our fathers were there. They saw the power. They saw the fire. They heard the voice. No other people in history heard the voice on that level like our fathers did. He has revealed himself to nobody like that. And they heard his voice speak the covenant to our fathers alone. And this cloud followed them all the way to this day where they was getting this word from Moses. The cloud followed them. It was a visible sign of the Father's Spirit with them. And so he gave them the covenant. And that's why he said, obey my law, obey my covenant, because they had witness. They didn't have to go nowhere. It was there. They saw water come out of rocks. They saw it. They saw manna come from heaven. They saw him provide them birds to eat, chicken, fowl. They saw him provide it. They didn't have to have faith. They saw it. And so Moses is teaching them, keep the commandments with all your heart. Follow your father, that cloud. Follow him. Be obedient to him. You don't have to go to heaven to get no more word. It's come to you. It's right here. They saw it. When the Ark of the Covenant was brought into the sanctuary Moses was told to make, the Bible said the smoke was so powerful, nobody could go in there. They saw it. When Moses would get ready to go to that sanctuary, they would all stand in the door of their tents, the Bible said, until he went in and then waited for him to come out. They saw it. So that Moses could say, nobody needs to go beyond the sea or go to heaven or go nowhere to get it for you. It's right here. Believe what you have seen, what you have experienced, what you know. Believe it. Well, Messiah tells Nicodemus, no man has ascended to heaven, but he that came down from heaven, even the Son of Man, which was in heaven. That's what he just said. What is he saying to Nicodemus? You come to me by night, seeing what we have done, seeing the miracles. Believe it. Believe what you've seen. He ain't got to send you no other proof. He's already sent it. I'm standing right in front of you, Nicodemus. He said, you receive not our witness. Isn't that what he said? He said, we testify what we do see and what we have heard, and you receive not our witness. It's right here in your presence, Nicodemus. And that's what he's telling him. Now, Messiah had come. By the time Paul is writing this letter, Messiah had come. And not only that, there was the witness of the Spirit outpouring on the disciples and apostles. There was the witness of the miracles Paul had done. There was the witness of the power of righteousness being shown on the Hebrews. And so now Paul is going to say, no man needs to ascend to heaven. You've seen it. You know we're testifying of the truth. We're bearing witness, brothers and sisters. Haven't we read in the word where the Father say through his prophet, his Israelite prophets, you are my witnesses? He said, you are my witnesses. There is no other God. He said, you are my witnesses. There is no other God. Wasn't we last night talking about it ain't knocking on somebody's door and asking them to buy tract from your Watchtower or your SDA or your Ellen White or your Book of Mormon? What is it? It is the power of perfect righteousness from the Spirit of the Father that rests upon us. That's the witness. You are my witnesses, he said. So now, in these last days, he give us his word and he give us his Spirit. He don't need to go send it. He don't need to send somebody up to heaven to go get anything for us. You are my witnesses. Now, let's go to Romans chapter 10. Romans chapter 10. Praise the Most High. Romans chapter 10. So last night we studied how our fathers stumbled over the Messiah. He was the stumbling block, the chief cornerstone, the stumbling block. Why? Because they didn't want to believe that Messiah would just come here to pay for sin and not overthrow the Romans. But that's what he did. And they asked, if you recall, will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel? Because that's the expectation. That's the whole Bible hope, brethren, of all of the Hebrew Israelites in the Bible. Messiah will come and restore the kingdom, restore David's throne. And that's what the book of Revelation shows us, doesn't it? You see what? New Jerusalem with 12 gates. 12 gates? Yes, representing the 12 tribes of Israel, which the Father promised also in Ezekiel, which is the promise of all the Hebrew prophets, which is what we're all waiting for, which is going to come in the next 10 years. Yes, it is. That's the promise. So they did not want to receive him who was paying the penalty for their sins. They wanted to see him beat down the Romans. Now, as we are now being prepared, just like our ancient fathers did not want to receive the instruction that would prepare them for the kingdom. You see, it was 40 years it took our fathers to get from Egypt into Jericho. Why did it take 40 years for a journey that even on foot would take a matter of weeks, maybe a couple of months, right? But it took them 40 years. Why? Because they did not want to surrender to the preparation that they would need to live in a kingdom. Well, brothers and sisters, you and I are being prepared to live in the kingdom, which is why we're going to go through this bridge of fire that we're now dealing with our own family. Which is why I'm telling you about the governor of Florida, because we know it's coming. Why is it coming? Because Father knows that you and I will be prepared. He won't let us go through this unless he prepares us. And now we must surrender so that we can live the righteousness in the kingdom with angels and with brethren. And this thing will never happen again, that this rebellion. There'll be no more Babylon or anything like Babylon. So we got to be ready for that kingdom. We got to be prepared to live. And it's not for us to decide we're ready. It's for Father and Messiah to look on us and say, okay, you're ready. You don't decide you're ready. They decide when you're ready. And they are also deciding how they will prepare us. And you know, and I know they're preparing you now. Listen, man, if tomorrow you find out, they caught Brother Todd in this motel with some woman, don't be surprised. Don't let that discourage you. That would be me sinning. Now, I ain't did that. Don't get me wrong. I ain't did it. I try to be pretty straightforward about these things because the Father's blessed me. So, like, honestly, if I was doing something like that and y'all found out, I'd just tell you. Even if it meant the end of the ministry, I would just tell you. I would say, yeah, I got caught with this woman. It happened. I would just tell you, because I don't want to play games with the Father. This is no time to play games in any way, brethren. And Moses taught us, be sure your sin will find you out. Be sure your sin will find you out. So it's going to happen. Don't front. You know what I'm saying? No need in fronting, And that's what I even told my wife. I said, if I snuck around and had sex with somebody and you asked me about it, I'm going to tell you, yeah, I did it. Even if it meant the end of us. I just got this, I can't hide it. It just did it. It happened. But the Father is able to keep me if I ask him to keep me. And he's able to keep you if you ask him to keep you. And I'm bearing witness that he has done that. That's why I'm not scared of it. I guess that's what it comes down to, isn't it? I'm not scared of that. I'm not. Don't ever fear, brethren, when you have the Father at your disposal in Messiah. Don't fear. Don't fear. Yeah, sin shall not have dominion over you. That's the Bible saying. And that's because we're trusting. He said, because you're not under the law, you're under grace. What does that mean? That means you're under the Father's spirit of righteousness. As long as that's the case, he will keep us from ourselves. He will keep us from the law of sin and death. He will cause it to overcome. There's no doubt. I bear witness. Okay, I bear witness. It's the truth. Okay, so now in Romans chapter 10, we see that our brethren stumbled, our fathers stumbled over the Messiah. They didn't want to trust in him for perfect righteousness. And Paul goes into why they created their own version of righteousness. They're Sanhedrins, they're Sadducees. They created their own version of righteousness and was basically became religious, right? What you don't want is to become religious. Religious is man. We are a nation that follows a God. Yeah. We're not in a religion. We're a nation of people that are scattered. And anyone that becomes part of us becomes part of the scattered nation. And we follow the Hebrew Messiah of our nation, the tribe of Judah. That's where he's from. He's of our nation. We're a scattered nation, as the Bible says we would be. We're a scattered nation. That's right, we're fam. And so what happens now, and you know what? It's no accident. Like I remember it from the 60s when I was little, when people would call each other brother and sister. I don't know why I never questioned it. I just received it. But now it makes sense, doesn't it? Like, seriously, you brethren from among the Gentiles, y'all don't call each other brother and sister when you're not related, do you? You don't say you my brother, you my sister, unless you go to a Christian church. But generally, you don't do that. But when in the 60s, I remember coming out of the civil rights movement, we all just called each other brother and sister. Now, I don't know if it began before that, but we used to just say brother, sister, so the sister. And even today, somebody say, well, what did they look like? It was a sister. And if I'm talking to somebody black, they know exactly what I mean. If I say, I saw a brother the other day. Where? Well, this brother works with me on my job. You know what I'm talking about, right? I mean, you know what I'm saying. And it's not like I'm trying to be racist or anything. It's just something that came, like it just came to us. And brothers and sisters, we're part of the fam. Part of the fam. Okay? So when you come to Messiah in the truth, you're coming to a family of a nation that's come from our Father in heaven. That's what you're doing. When you get baptized into Messiah, you're getting baptized into a scattered nation, a family. No matter what color you are, you're getting baptized into a scattered nation, not a religion. It's not a religion. Now you follow, you worship, you pray, you read the word, you seek righteousness, but that's because that's part of the God of your nation. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who were the patriarchs of the nation. Right? They weren't patriarchs of a church. That's why when somebody said, well, Abraham founded Judaism. No, he didn't. Abraham was the father of a nation. He said, I'm going to make you the father. Abraham, Kam, that part means town, or it means city. Kam, like, Buckingham Palace. They got that from that Abraham. His name was Abram, but he said, I'm changing your name to Abraham because I'm making you the father of nations. A chosen nation, a royal priesthood, a family. That's right. So here in Epistle of Romans chapter 10, now he's going to go to the next level, beginning at verse 5. And this is what we just read in Deuteronomy. Okay, so beginning at verse 5, Romans chapter 10, beginning at verse 5, and going from verse 5 down to verse 10. Okay, from verse 5 to 10, Romans chapter 10, 5 through 10. For Moses describeth the blessedness which is of the law, that the man which doeth those things shall live by them. But the righteousness which is of faith, speaking on this wise, say not in thine heart, who shall ascend into heaven? Didn't we just read that? That is to bring Messiah down from above. Or who shall descend into the deep? That is to bring up Messiah again from the dead. But what saith it? The word is nigh thee, even in thy mouth and in thy heart. That is the word of faith which we preach, that if thou shalt confess with thy mouth the Lord Master Yahweh Shai, and shalt believe in thy heart that Yah hath raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. For with the heart man believeth unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. Now the Christians have jacked this up. Just raise your hand and say you believe in Jesus and you're going to be saved. No. What is it saying? What did Moses say? Obey my commandments. They're right here. Nobody has to go get them for you. They're right here. You are my witnesses. You are here. Well, what do we say now? Righteousness by faith. The power of Father's righteousness through Messiah. We are witnesses. Nobody needs to go get anything for you. It's here. So trust in the Hebrew Messiah of the tribe of Judah. Trust in the perfection of his Father's righteousness. That's the message of the gospel. That's the message of Messiah. Father's perfect righteousness. Trust in that. Trust in it with all your heart. And confess it. Confess what? Confess Father has perfect righteousness. He that cometh to Yah must believe that he is. that he exists. That he exists. Confession is made unto salvation. Father Yah exists. Messiah was sent by him to give us perfect righteousness. Father Yah exists. I trust in Messiah. I trust whom Father sent. I believe in him and I'm committed. The word believe is not, see, this is the thing, brethren. In the Greek, and I'm not an expert, but I think y'all will agree with what I'm about to say. In the Greek philosophy, that's what it is, philosophy. Everything's a philosophy with them. They went down into Egypt and stole all of the stuff that the Africans, the children of Ham wrote. The Mizraim, they stole all of it and they brought it back to Greece and they called it philosophy. And they would debate and argue about it. Christianity is a philosophy. You see, we don't serve a philosophy. We serve the only true God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So, to confess and to believe that is to say, I believe in one God, Yah, and he has one Messiah, Yahushua, and I believe that he sent him and that he can give me perfect righteousness. That's it. This is not a theoretical thing. I believe in theory. This is a commitment. I'm committing to what? Well, what do we say when y'all get baptized? What do we say? Trust in Yahweh with all thy heart and lean not to your own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him and he shall direct thy paths. Isn't that what we say? Trust in Yahweh with all thy heart. That's what this is saying. Trust in Yahweh with all thy heart and lean not to thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him and he will direct your path. That's what that is. It's not just raising your hand and say, I believe in Jesus. No, I'm committing to the Messiah and to the Messiah's Father. I'm committing to trust in him and not in myself. I'm committing to the perfect righteousness of faith that he has given me, that I can overcome the law of sin and death. I'm committing to that. I'm going to acknowledge it every time I'm tempted, every time I want to do something that's against him, I'm going to acknowledge it. And again, in that same verse, Proverbs 3, 5, 6, and then verse 7, it says, trust in Yahweh with all thy heart and lean not to your own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him and he will direct our path. Fear Yahweh and depart from evil. That's what it says. That's what it says. That's what it means to believe, to commit, to be a disciple of the Messiah who bore witness of Father Yah. That's what it means. And that's something, right, you got to think about. Right? Because, you can't just flippantly. I remember when we used to do prison ministry, there was a guy that came in there, his time we would come in shifts. And his shift was before me and my man's shift when we came in to teach. And man, he would be yelling at the prisoners, believe in Jesus, believe in Jesus, you'll be saved. And they would give in and just raise their hand just to get him to shut up. They say, you're saved now. That's not it. That's man-made religion. And remember we talked about man-made religion is fanatical. Man-made religion is man being glorified, not the Father Yah. It is not the Father's Spirit causing you to raise your hand and say, I trust in Jesus and then I'm going to be saved forever no matter what I do. No, you got to make a conscious choice to commit to the Father. You have to have a witness of his Spirit working in your heart. You have to have a witness of the Spirit working in you. You have to have a witness of his word that you know for yourself. And this is the thing somebody said to me, prove that God exists. I'm not going to argue with you about whether God exists. I'm convicted about the existence of Father Yah. I don't need to prove it to you or scientifically prove it. That's not my business. I'm convicted. And that's all that matters to me. I can't go against my own conscious conviction. Right? Right? What you want? Me to go against my own conscience? That's what people do. That's stupid. To me, that's stupid. You getting convicted in your conscience about something. You going to fight it because you need scientific proof. What's the science? That's why the Bible calls it science, so-called. There is a spirit that is above science. There is a spirit that science cannot prove, cannot understand, cannot explain. But yet we know by our own witness it exists. There's a spirit of light and there's a spirit of darkness. And ain't no science to it. But there's conviction. There's conviction, for sure. See, that's what the thing is. Science teaches us a lot. It really does. There's good science out there teach you lots of things, man. But it cannot explain what happens when you die. It cannot explain how a spirit moves on your heart. It cannot explain how a spirit can come and change your life. It cannot explain that. It can't explain because it doesn't understand it. That is in a dimension that's above man. Man can never understand that dimension. That's the Father's dimension. You can't explain that. There's no science to explain it. And that's purposely done because man is not God, though Asatan has promised him that. Okay, he's promised him that. He's not. So, anyway, I'm going to stop here. It's 12:33. We're going to come back. We just wanted to go through that part because, as you know, and I know very well, the Christians have totally annihilated that verse and changed its meaning and caused people to believe things that are not true. That you could just raise your hand and white Jesus is going to save you and you can just sin after that and you're always going to be saved. That's a lie. He's saying commit to the spirit and word that you've been given the conviction on. Commit to the power that you have borne witness of. Commit to Messiah and to his Father. And he will give you power over sin and death. Praise the Most High. May the Most High bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. We're going to come back in about an hour at 1:30 Eastern time and continue in our study. Praise the Most High. May the Most High continue to guide you in his spirit. Pray for us too that we be faithful. Shalom.